like to at least understand what everyone's view is on the topic on fair representation and inclusion in the workplace.
So when we talk about representation and inclusion, and most of us think of this as a charity or as something that we're doing for someone else, you know. But actually, it's not for someone else. Our society is made up of people of all segments, of all types, of all genders, of all backgrounds, right? And when we're talking about a workplace, for example, if it's a corporate sector and we're talking about products that are going to be used by everybody, the better your product suits the needs of the, the more types of people, the more your product will take off, right? So if you have a, if you're making any item, let's say a pen, yeah, there are no gender differences, but let's assume there are gender differences in a pen. Now, if you only have men in the team who are taking those decisions and who are taking the call of how do we design that pen is going to be most likely suitable for men to use, right? It might be that big, it might be that thick, it might be, that bulky. But if you also have women in the team, the people contributing to the design will have multiple perspectives, and hence your product will be, better suited to both the genders, and hence your takeoff will be higher, right? So inclusion is not a charity. Inclusion is not something that you do for someone else. It's actually a thing that is beneficial for you yourself, because it increases the usability of your product. Usability, even in government, it increases the usability of our scheme. So for example, if we are designing a marketplace or we're designing a building, and that building does not have women toilets, the number of employees you might get who might be really, really smart, you will lose out on them, right? You will lose out on those women employees. You design a marketplace, it's not suitable to women because it's all the men who have designed it. Your customer is a woman, she will not turn up in your market. She will not spend money in your market. So you lose that, right? So as government, designing footpaths, designing parking spaces, all of those things, when your users are people of multiple types, you need to have multiple voices in the design process, in the creation process, in the decision process. And that is where you need inclusion. So inclusion is not about charity or about giving something to someone else. It's actually making your product or making your service or making your policy something which reaches everybody, something which has a wider scope and hence a wider offtake and hence more chances of success. So for me, representation and inclusion actually talks about that. So, your whole ideology behind any product changes because of that, and it makes it a lot more better.
When we talk about disability inclusion, right, and this is the area where I'm particularly focused on. A few days back, there was an article from Times of India which talked about that out of the 1.34 crores of people with disabilities that are in India, only 34 lakhs of them are employed in some form or the other. Now it includes self-employed people as well. So what it means is rest of the persons with disabilities who exist in India does not have any form of income or the other, or they are totally dependent on their family members or their relatives. So my point is, where in India as a country, we have always talked about culture, we have always talked about, inclusion in a wider manner, where we have emerged as the country who has taught cultural inclusion to the countries in the West. Where are we lacking in a country that we have to teach humanity to humans and companies? We have to tell them that don't exclude a certain part of the community. This is basic common sense that all sectors of the society and all people from the society should be included and provided with a basic dignity and a means to earn. A right to have a job is nothing of charity. It is a basic necessity that everyone should have and everyone should be provided with. I believe there should be adequate machinery and adequate infrastructure in place to ensure that it happens. It is not that you are doing a favor to somebody or you are doing it as CSR. it is a moral responsibility of each and every company that there should be equal opportunities provided. I mean, we are talking about building cities in the Mars, and here we are not able to provide opportunities to everybody who's a part of the society here on this planet. So we have come a long way, but we have a long way to go. And I believe discussions like this is going to bring more awareness and help it grow forward. I have represented brands at a very micro level and a macro level as well. And I have been a part of this strategic process where they think about products or branding in terms of diversity and inclusion. But it's mostly every time in terms of CSR or in terms of ki theek hai chalo karna hai kar dete hain. This is something. This is a mindset which needs to change. There has to be a phenomenal shift in terms of the thinking that is there. And when we talk about inclusion in terms of persons with disabilities also, I see there's a phenomenal discrimination in terms of the types of persons with disabilities who are, admitted to the companies. Most of the time, they prefer people with physical disabilities or some other disability over some people who have multiple disabilities. So there is discrimination within the disability spectrum as well. And if we talk about diversity and inclusion in general, people think diversity and inclusion is about women's rights, is about gender equality, is about racial equality. But where is the discussion about persons with disabilities? Have we taken a backseat on that?
It's important to locate the question of inclusion and diversity and to pose that as an entitlement question, as a rights question, and not simply as a question of charity. And I think it's important that particularly within the Indian context and within the Indian subcontinent at large, it's important that we're able to locate the question of diversity and inclusion within the fabric of historical discrimination that we are dealing with, right? So we are looking at a social context where the genesis of power is caste. And I think any understanding of inclusion and diversity has to be rooted within that, and has to be, we have a constitution that specifically, recognizes caste-based discrimination and prohibits it, and not just recognizes it, also makes provisions for, addressing the question of caste-based discrimination through affirmative action. And therefore, I think it's important for us to not historicize or understand the question of diversity within this sort of constitutional fabric of rights that we are dealt with, right? Because we are a constitutional democracy, and I think particularly in the corporate sector, I think it's important now for this sort of understanding of rights to emerge, because so far I think we're operating with a very welfare charity driven sort of model where there are companies who may be invested in the question of diversity more than others, but at the end of the day it's left up to the kindness of corporate entities and individuals that run those entities, right? But I think it's important to now shift that understanding to say, well, this is a right that people have, right, by virtue of not just being citizens of this country, but also inalienable rights as human beings. And therefore, it is important to recognize those rights, and for those rights to be woven into the creation of a space, and for creation of a workspace, and for our understanding of workspace and rights of people who are working within an organization to be informed by this understanding of the fact that these are individuals that are located in various social contexts. I mean, at this point, I think the conversation has moved, uh, to the question of hiring, right? To say that we need to ensure diversity in hiring. But I think we're still a far cry away from saying that we need to create an enabling and a safe workplace for people who belong to diverse contexts. And I think during the course of this discussion, I hope that we're able to reflect on this a little bit, and we're able to look at the question of a workplace, particularly within the corporate setup, in terms of how the rights of various individuals who are accessing this space can be safeguarded.